We've all had that question in our mind at least once. What if? What if we could go back? What if we could change what had originally happened? What if we could tell our past self what's to come of their future? What if we could undo the one regret of our entire life? So, if you have been on this channel for long enough, you would know that I have a passionate love for the Owl House. This show has instantly become my favorite TV show of all time, with its writing, its phenomenal animation, its lovable characters, and overall is everything that I would want from a show. However, every show is going to have its negative outcomes, because I guess that's just the internet these days. And I can respect a lot of them, but one that really bothers me personally is how everybody seems to have had a dislike of the character Lilith. For those that don't know, Lilith is the older sister to Ida, the mentor of our protagonist Luce. Lilith is a high-class figure in the world of the Boiling Isles, acting as the Emperor's servant and enforcer, and as one of the most powerful witches in the Isles, tied with her sister of course. Lilith for a majority of the show's first season acts as the main antagonist, and has a deep desire to bring her sister into the Emperor's coven. Outside of the show, a lot of people like here have had a hate for Lilith when she first came to the show. People called her a lame antagonist and not a great character in the show, but I want to go over why I disagree with these statements and take a more in-depth look at her character. Now, before we go any further, I should address that these are simply my thoughts and interpretations of the show, so please take them with a grain of salt, and also spoilers for the show from here forward. So, let's get into why I think Lilith Clawthorne is a misunderstood character. Later into the first season, it's revealed in flashbacks brought up by Lilith that in the past, her and Ida were really close as sisters and had the same goal of joining the Emperor's Coven and becoming some of the most powerful witches on the Boiling Isles. However, at the time they were about to join, only one spot was available, and the sisters would have to fight for it. Lilith greatly wanted the position, but knew she wouldn't earn it since Ida was more dedicated and powerful than she was. As an impulse to gain an advantage, Lilith cursed Ida with a spell that claimed would remove her powers, which she thought would only last a day. Lilith had the idea for this action since she followed a quote said by the Emperor, "To be great, you must be willing to make sacrifices." I think this quote is more important than it appears, so we'll go more in depth with it later. The day of their battle came, and immediately Ida ended it before it even started. After Ida turns down the battle since she refuses to fight her sister and gives a few uplifting words to her before walking away, the outcome of Lilith's choice, her sacrifice, shows its true colors. Ida had been cursed, and as far as she knows, there's no cure. Lilith watches ashamed at what she's done to the one person that actually mattered to her, even attempts to reach her and explain, but is interrupted by the Coven guards to show that she has been accepted into the Emperor's Coven, the highest honor that a witch could have on the Isles. This is what Lilith wanted, what she worked so hard for, what she dreamed of achieving throughout her life, and yet, she isn't overjoyed, excited, or ecstatic. She's finally achieved her dream, but at what cost? She lost the one thing that inspired her to pursue that dream in the first place. Without Ida by her side, she was nothing. The trauma that she gained from her choice and what she's lost will be a part of her from this moment on. But after gaining this position, she turns from heartbroken to determined. She will do anything to undo the worst mistake of her life and bring her family back, since now she's in a higher position to do so. Fueled by the trauma that she's gained, she wants to do everything in her power to fix what she did. This is eventually what leads to Lilith playing as the main antagonist for the first season of the show's run. Every time that Lilith and Ida interact with one another, Lilith is always focused on bringing her sister before the Emperor and into his coven, since it can both heal or curse, as Belos, the Emperor, claims he can do, and so that they can also live their dream of being in a coven together. This mindset may be due to how she might still follow the quote said to her by the Emperor as a witchling: "To be great, you must be willing to make sacrifices." Belos throughout the season is shown to have a massive influence on society after he gained control of the Isles. He interpreted to the people that to be great and to live to their full potential, you have to follow the rules that he established and earn your way to the top. In this case, to have the honor of joining the Emperor's Coven and being able to legally wield all forms of magic. Lilith is a prime example of this manipulation. She was so focused on living up to this definition of great that she threw away everything that she had to live up to that title. If she doesn't follow this philosophy of great that's been defined by society, then she perceives herself as a failure, nothing, and feels worthless. Now, back to Ida. Ida denies the proposal to join her sister every time that is brought up, since it's not really her dream to join a coven anymore, being the main reason that she turned down their battle years before. Lilith has been so keen on living this dream of being in a coven with her sister at her side and fixing her mistake that she's become blind to everything else that's in her life. Lilith keeps telling herself that by not being an Emperor's Coven, Ida won't ever be great, be able to heal from her curse or live up to the dream that they both once had. Lilith even brings up that by not being in a coven, Ida appears to be becoming weak, which she first pointed out in their first fight in the show, which she sees as a consequence of her choice all those years ago.
I don't know how much time I have left.
I'll admit I was surprised when I first saw you today.
She wasn't surprised at the sight of her sister being out in the open after all this time. She was surprised just how bad her condition has gone as a result of her choice, making her feel even more guilty of what she's done to her and even more determined to bring her in to undo her mistake, further fueling that trauma that she has from it. One moment that I really love between the sisters that seems to be underappreciated is this scene.
You gonna cart me away to the coven now, are you?
Not now, because I want to give you a chance to join on your own. Join me in the Emperor's Coven, Edelin. He could even heal your curse.
No, I'll heal it on my own terms. I don't want to owe him anything. Catch you later, sis.
Not if I catch you first.
This is one of the few moments in the show where we see the sincere side to Lilith. Lilith has asked Ida to join the Emperor's Coven multiple times before, but in this moment, she's not asking as the Emperor's right hand who's following orders, she's asking as a sister that genuinely loves and wants the best for the one member of her family that she has left, her sister. But even when Ida sticks to her decision to not join, Lilith respects it. She doesn't fight, get frustrated, or retaliate, she lets her go, because deep down, she still wants her sister to be happy. Because now she's seen that despite being treated by society the way she is after Lilith placed a curse on her, Ida still managed to find purpose and happiness in her life. Ida probably didn't even realize she had it or appreciated it until Luz came into her life. But keen to live up to the approval of both the Emperor and the eyes of society, she still has to come back and ask Ida to join, even trying to convince her that the Emperor himself wants her to join and not just for her sake. Ida, seeing her rivalry as a way to have some fun, does offer Lilith a challenge as a chance to have her join. But after losing, Lilith isn't worried or ashamed that her sister isn't coming back with her or that she's once again been bested by her. She's instantly more worried of what the Emperor will think of her after she returns to say that she's failed again. She's completely internalized the idea that she has to be great in the eyes of the Emperor or else she's nothing. Lilith is always in this constant turmoil, living up to what her peers in society expects of her while also trying to pursue something of her own desire, which is to fix her mistake and have her family back. This to me is what makes Lilith so intriguing. She wants both to fix her mistake and have her sister back, but she also wants to live her dream of being in the Emperor's Coven and having the satisfaction that she's living up to what society expects of her to be great. What makes this so hard is that the show is obviously portraying that this choice isn't so easy and that she can't have it both ways. As Norman Osborn once said, "You're struggling to have everything you want while the world tries to make you choose." In the end, we ultimately see the choice that Lilith makes, and we'll get more in detail with what leads up to that choice later. But before she made that decision, we see that by chasing down this dream life that Lilith wants, she has to face many battles, both physically against her sister and mentally against herself as she continues to deal with the trauma of what she's done to herself and her family. One thing I found while going through the show for this analysis is that every difference that Ida and Lilith has falls back to one simple decision between the sisters, and that's the siblings' choice on whether or not they should join a coven. Ida made the choice to not join one, which goes against what society perceives to be correct, and she's become a criminal, a freelancer, and free-spirited. Lilith did make the choice to join a coven and follow those expectations of society, and compared to Ida is almost in the opposite circumstances. She's well respected, the Emperor's personal servant, and overall is an authoritative figure in the eyes of the people of the Boiling Isles. This reminds me of the philosophy behind the relationship that Dante and Virgil have in Devil May Cry. Similar to the Clawthorne sisters, the sons of Sparta share one choice that led them to following different paths in their life. Dante made the decision to follow the humanity that was shown to him by his mother after she saved him, but at the cost of her own life. Following that humanity, Dante became lighthearted, emotional, and down to earth, being able to connect and sympathize with others as he sees the humanity that's in them as well. Virgil, on the other hand, made the opposite choice to follow the path of power gifted to him through his father Sparta, after he believes that's the only reason he survived the attack on his home. Through this path, Virgil became power-hungry, determined to only achieve his goal, and grew to hate the human side of himself, to the point that he would physically get rid of it in an attempt to grow even more powerful. He even is willing to get rid of anyone in his life that would falter those attempts to become stronger. The same can be said for the decision of the Clawthorne sisters. Ida had the humanity to not fight her sister out of love for her and knowing that she desperately wanted a position that Ida decided she didn't want anymore. while Lilith made the decision to follow the path of desperation and power, which ultimately led to her losing the one thing she had left, her sister. I think it's important to notice that despite knowing that Ida would be weakened in the fight, Lilith didn't hesitate at all to charge in at the start of their battle. She was so motivated by the expectations placed on her by society that she left everything behind to live up to those expectations and earn that position. The duality of the decision can go even further in how the sisters interact with the people around them. Like the difference between Dante and Virgil, both brothers have their different ways of interacting with others. Dante, with the decision to follow his humanity, actually cares about the lives that he comes across, the biggest example being how he first came to befriend Lady. When Dante first met Lady, he thought of her as nothing more than a bloodthirsty powerhouse, but willing to hear her out more and more, he learns that she actually had a reason for her bloodlust, her drive to receive revenge against the death of her mother. This notion Dante sympathizes with since he too was once where she was. The whole reason he became a demon hunter was to avenge his mother and find the ones responsible for her death. He knows the strain and pain that one can experience while going down that path, following a traumatic event like losing a parent. So even though that Lady still perceives him as a demon, he's willing to take on the weight of her burden as well as his own, since he hates the thought of someone going through what he did. Virgil, on the other hand, has no care whatsoever for the people around him. I mean, at the very first sight of someone trying to tempt him by asking about his family and legacy, he nearly killed him right then and there. However, he gave this man a chance at the very moment he learned of his interest in power like him, and he could use him as a way to gain more power for himself. This man he would grow to know as Arkham, Lady's father. He for a while would keep his promise of power to Virgil, but the moment that Virgil witnesses human emotion from Arkham, as Virgil sees that he still has sympathy for his daughter, he stabs him without a second thought. Because unlike Dante, who would have seen this as a way to connect with him with his humanity, Virgil sees it as a sign of weakness. Virgil has internalized that idea that the only thing he needs is power. More power, and everything else is a weakness or distraction that'll keep him from reaching his goal. Ida and Lilith are essentially the same as the Sons of Sparta when it comes to interacting with others. Ida, with her humanity like Dante, is able to listen and sympathize with others, like caring about King, ensuring that he stays safe and what makes him happy. Heck, she has the compassion to welcome a girl from another world that she barely even knows into her home, since she sees the humanity and flaws that's in Luce that she also sees in herself. Lilith, with her desire for power and respect like Virgil, has almost no one in her life, except Steve. We all like Steve. But take what happened to Amity when she and Luce first battled. Lilith instinctively rigged the fight so that Amity would have the advantage, but after being revealed that she cheated, she never acknowledges that she used Amity as a tool. She didn't consider the outcome as to what would happen to Amity after this incident. She was so fixated on proving to her sister that she was the better teacher that she didn't consider how Amity would feel about it or how she could move on from an event like this. These aspects of the sisters' rivalry extend even further beyond themselves and to their proteges. Luce follows Ida's humanity, has the will to try and comfort Amity after the results of their first battle, but Amity follows Lilith's desire of living up to the expectations placed on her and argues with Luce over what's happened. Like Lilith, she isn't upset at the fact that the fight didn't go her way. She's frustrated at the fact that after this event, her reputation and dreams of pursuing a position in the Emperor's Coven will never be the same, or may be ruined altogether. Out of desperation to keep her reputation up at least for her own satisfaction, she exclaimed in anger to Luce to admit that Amity's better than her, that she was the real loser, that she's not a witch. Luce does give way and admits to all the flaws that Amity mentioned, which actually surprises the young apprentice. But Luce continues to express her humanity by showing that she indeed isn't a witch by blood, but is willing to find her own way to become one, and doesn't want to fight Amity any more than she needs to. Even with all these choices and views aside, the dualic nature of the Clawthorne sisters can be seen in their simplest form, their character designs. In their designs from the show's first season, we see the sisters have clear opposites of each other. Ada is more eccentric with her crazy hair, her ragged clothes, and majorly follows a red color scheme, symbolizing her dangerous yet caring nature. Lilith complements Ida's design by being the opposite, having more elegant hair, being sharply dressed, and follows a color scheme opposite of Ida's, being blue, which can symbolize her more composed nature, but also the great sadness and grief that she carries off her actions, and even the trauma that she carries that we discussed before. The duality of these characters is really what makes them so fascinating and investing to me. Without one of them, you couldn't have the other. Lilith wouldn't be the conflicted yet composed person we see her to be had it not been for Ida and the actions that made her feel guilty towards her. Ida wouldn't be the dangerous, free-spirited, yet caring mentor without the experiences she's received as a result of Lilith's actions. A good way to think of the sisters is as two sides of a coin. They may be opposite to each other, but they still can be the same and remain together, and sometimes that can be worthwhile. The biggest criticism I hear around Lilith is her arc during the first season's finale episodes. In the span of one episode, Lilith goes from villain to hero, and I will give those people credit in saying that it does happen quite fast. But I don't really see that as a bad thing. Lilith is still determined to bring Ida before the Emperor, especially now that he's threatening her with the risk of losing her place in the Coven if she doesn't bring the Owlade to him before the day is over. Lilith in her mind has come too far to fall now. She has to find something to convince her sister to join her, just something. Or someone. This eventually all falls back to Luce, the prime reason that Ida came face to face with her sister once again and rekindled their rivalry. Luce in my eyes kinda acts as the middle ground between the duality of the Clawthorne sisters. She has that drive to gain more power and respect like Lilith does in her journey of becoming a witch, but she still has the humanity like Ida to be able to appreciate the other people around her and to have a desire to use her gifts to help them, and not just for herself. She even sports the color that comes from the combination of the Clawthorne's colors, purple. Earlier into the season, we see that Lilith looked down on Luce since she was a human, thinking that it was a joke for her sister to even be with someone like her, let alone to be a mentor to. Even during the finale, she looked down on Luce as nothing more than an object to bait Ida into a fight to bring her before the Emperor. At the first sight of her, she doesn't call Luce Ida's apprentice. Instead, she says Ida's human pet. Ida still shows her humanity by being upset and worried about Luce's safety, especially at the hands of her sister. Lilith continues to show her desperation to impress her peers as she worries that her sister might not actually come, all the more pressuring as the Emperor looks down at her demandingly. But the bait works, and Ida comes to rescue Luce, barely even giving Lilith a chance to speak. Lilith demands for the final time to her sister that joining her in the Emperor's Coven truly is the best option. But this was the last straw for the Owl Lady. She can handle her sister messing with her to try and change her mind. But bringing Luce into all of this, the person that she has grown to appreciate as one of the best things that happened to her in her life, and believes that she doesn't deserve to be a part of this argument, she's finally had enough. Nothing is holding these sisters back as they battle. Ida is fueled by the rage and the humanity within her, shown further as during the battle she's seen to care more about Luce not being hurt during the turmoil than actually defeating her sister that betrayed her. Lilith is driven by her desire of living up to the expectations placed on her and losing everything that she's gained. It's at this moment that the sisters are at their strongest, both determined to best the other, where everything is on the line for both of them. But Lilith still gains the upper hand as she sees Ida's attachment to her apprentice as a weakness, and abuses it to finally win the battle. Lilith had finally won, even smiling with satisfaction as she sees the approval of the figure she looks up to. However, Lilith witnesses during her battle with the Owl Lady just how much Luce actually meant to Ida. It may have not shown, but she witnessed that Ida cared so much for Luce that she was willing to give up her life for humans. I feel like this is even shown further as Luce attacks Lilith out of rage at what she's done. Lilith defends herself from Luce, but instead of doing any more harm to her, she simply just pushes her away and warns her not to return. She could have thrown Luce over the edge like before since she still believed that Luce was inferior to her, but no, she simply pushes her away out of respect for how her sister perceived her, because Lilith realizes that maybe Luce isn't just a human, she actually was worth something to her sister, which Lilith could have been envious about after being so downtrodden by her sister for so long. She wanted that sisterly love back so badly that she respected Luce for earning it in a way that she couldn't. There's a reason that Lilith emphasized that Ida's back with her real family now. Lilith has seen firsthand just how much Ida considered Luce a part of her family, but out of jealousy of just how far she's come with Ida, she exclaims to Luce that she would never really be as much of a family member as her, the Clawthorne's own flesh and blood. But finally, she's done it. Once again, her hard work has paid off. She's finally brought her sister to where she believes they both belong, before the Emperor. She's determined for this moment to finally happen, excited even. She's finally going to get everything she's wanted, to keep in the position that she's dreamed of having for so long, fixing the mistake that got her here in the first place, and finally having her sister back at her side once again that she's always wanted since she was a witchling, bringing an end to the lifelong traumas that she's endured. However, Ida continues to refuse her fate even as Bellows enters the room. Lilith assures him that she will be a great benefit to him and not just for her, but Bellows shows the real reason why Ida is here. The portal she possesses. The second he knows that she doesn't have it or won't disclose where it is, he discards her, further taking advantage of her caring nature by saying that he'll just pester the human instead of her. Ida is terrified at this notion. The whole reason that Ida was even captured and gave up her freedom was to ensure that Luce would be safe. Now she sees that she's still in danger, and now that she's here, she can't do anything about it. As Ida is dragged away, with a face of fear and desperation in her voice, she cries out to Lilith to not let anything happen to Luce. Lilith looks frightened at this request and becomes even more frightened that the Emperor would not heal her sister, the one thing she worked her entire Coven life for. After Lilith realizes what's going on, she learns a dark truth in her mind. That cry from Ida to protect Luce may have been her last word she'll ever hear from her. This is the last outcome that Lilith wanted from her efforts to fix her mistake, but she realizes from her past encounter that there may be somebody that wants Ida back as much as she does. Luce. One thing that I realized going through this season for the analysis, I noticed that Ida didn't necessarily have to call out to Lilith, but she did. Ida could have continued to call out to Bellis begging him to not hurt Luce, but instead, she calls out to Lilith for help. Despite just learning that she's the reason she has this curse at all, and why she's been on the run most of her life, she still sees her enough as family.
We might fight, but you're still my sister. You're still my sister.
Despite all the dark revelations she's received, Ida still sees those small sparks of humanity in her sister, just enough that she could trust her with her last wish, to keep Luce safe. It's at this pivotal moment that Lilith has to make her choice. Does she follow that path of power and respect and does as the Emperor ordered her, or does she follow those small pieces of humanity that her sister still sees in her and free Ida from her punishment and protect the human she's come to love as her own? It's shown through her expressions that Lilith is conflicted about all this. She's worked her whole life to be where she is, but she has to ask herself what's worth more to her position of respect, or her family. While pondering this question, Lilith soon learns that Luce is already making an attempt to free her mentor, and she learns that this is her last chance to make things right. Lilith eventually approaches Luce in an attempt to speak with her, but Luce isn't too happy with how her mentor has been betrayed by her own family, and with a tear of rage in her eye, she blindly attacks Lilith. During the fight, Luce exclaims in anger that Lilith should be the one to be in chains instead of Ida, and Lilith agrees. Luce, shocked and surprised, finally gives Lilith the chance to speak and explain herself. Luce finally sees why Lilith did what she did, and that she believed that bringing Ida in truly was the right thing to do. Lilith finally says that what she did was wrong, blinded by her ambition and dreams, finally able to talk to someone about the pain of her trauma that she's carried all these years, and that, like Luce, she desperately wants Ida back as well, but she knows she can't do it alone, and she wants Luce to be the one to help her. But despite all this, Luce is still reluctant to trust Lilith. However, this notion between Lilith and Luce ends with Lilith presenting a token of her trust. Albert, Ida's staff, and the last physical reminder she could possibly have of her sister, as she willingly gives it to her sister's apprentice. The Emperor had earlier ordered Lilith to have the staff destroyed. Lilith could have simply ignored this notion and hid it away as a way to keep the staff for herself, a reminder of its former owner, but also be able to continue living up to her position as the Emperor's right hand. But with that reminder of trust from Ida, she continues to live up to those small specks of humanity and hands the staff over to Luce. This can symbolize Lilith saying that she can't change the past of what she's done, but she wants to make things right for the sake of her sister and for Luce as well, not just for herself anymore. She's already made the mistake of betraying her sister once. She's not going to make that same mistake again. And now that they are together, with some rough patches in the road, they do eventually free the Out Lady from her stone prison. As they escaped, this all finally ends with what I think is one of the most emotional moments of the series.
Oh, sister. I should have done this a long time ago. With this spell declared, let the pain be shared.
This is the moment where Lilith finally acknowledges the pain that she's put Ida through throughout her life and finally takes on the weight of the consequences of her choice all those years ago. The curse may still remain with them, but she decides to at least make it better for both of them. Lilith now carries a similar pain that Ida does, which she accepts as punishment for what she's done, giving her closure that she's finally taking responsibility for her choice, and now Ida has some closure to what her sister has done now that some of the pain of her curse is gone. But Lilith is now willing to have the responsibility to accept that pain as her own. They can't change what's happened between them. Their chance for that has already passed, but now that they share this burden, they can at least do it together, which overall is really what Lilith wanted, to have her sister back at her side, just not in the way that she expected. The future may be scary for both of them, but now they have each other's eyes to look forward together as one. This dislike for Lilith would go on for quite a while since people had nothing else to talk about until Season 2 would eventually release. However, when Season 2 did finally come, people seemed to have a change of heart towards Lilith. This can probably be due to how they paired her with Hootie, which is honestly a hilarious combination of characters for the show. Through this connection of characters, we get a glimpse of how Lilith really feels and thinks during this rough patch in her life. Hootie constantly pecks at her saying that he wants to help, but Lilith continues to refuse as she believes that she's expected to do this on her own to make up for everything that she's done. But nevertheless, he persists until Lilith finally breaks.
You would what? Because it doesn't matter. You aren't me. You're just some kind of weird birdworm. You have no idea what I'm going through. I have to do this alone. Because if I can't, what kind of witch am I?
We've seen how Lilith was in the last season, and for the majority of her life, she's always been pursuing something that she's desired. She was so focused on her pursuit of her dream and affected by the trauma that's consumed her that she's never taken the time to actually wonder what she actually wanted, and what she actually wanted was her dream at all, which is why the audience is likely more interested in her character since she's in such a vulnerable state. But in reality, everything that she's wanted is what society made her believe is what she wanted, and now it's all gone. All the strain put on her is why she most likely broke down and went into Hootie. At this point, she's lost everything. She's lost her dream position in the Emperor's Coven, she's lost her powers that she's worked so hard to master, and to herself, she's lost the feeling that she can actually be forgiven of her actions towards her sister. After losing all of this, she finally faces the question of herself. Who am I? She's been so weighed down by society's expectations of her that she believed that everything she gained was truly who she was. But now with all that gone, she's lost, alone, helpless, feeling like a shadow of who she once was. It all sets in for her, just how far she's fallen, but realizes that she's had this revelation too late, and now there's no one that can help her. But then, Hootie returns to her side. Despite shunning Hootie before, he still comes to Lilith's aid, Lilith even being surprised that he actually did after what she said to him. After their endeavor, they have a heartwarming conversation about their encounter.
It's hard for me to ask for help.
It's okay. I'm sorry for being all nosy. But hey, Lulu, every friendship comes with its ups and downs, right, best friend?
Lilith in her Season 1 arc has been so keen on being the caring one for the people around her, which in her eyes was a way to make up for the actions that she's done in her past, that she's never actually had the feeling of being cared for or appreciated by others. Lilith may have enjoyed living her dream as being part of the Emperor's Coven, but we see that Belos never really gives Lilith respect or appreciation for the hard work that she's done while in that position. Belos never says anything like good work or well done to Lilith for her actions under his hand. Furthermore, Belos isn't even dismayed or shocked at the sight that Lilith would actually betray him. He simply brushes her aside as if she was just a tool waiting to outlive its purpose. We even see in the second season of the show that he doesn't appear to be distraught or envious about losing his most powerful asset. Lilith was working so hard for that admiration from her peers that she would do anything to gain it, further building onto that part of her feeling the need to constantly try to live up to what's expected of her. But now, she's finally found someone that genuinely wants to offer her that appreciation and love that she's always wanted. Before this interaction with Hootie, we can assume that Lilith has never really experienced some form of friendship outside of her sister. It's revealed later in the second season that she didn't get too much attention from her mother, and even while she was in the Emperor's Coven, it appears that she's never been attached to anyone. So in this somber moment, a hard time in her life, realizing what she has right in front of her, she accepts a friend. Someone that genuinely values her company, enjoys who she really is beneath that tough exterior, and willingly wants to help her through her hard times. Through this new relationship with Hootie, Lilith actually appears to be happy. Happier than we've ever seen her throughout the show, and that happiness didn't come from her constant desire of a dream or living up to what the Emperor society expects of her. It came from her simply valuing what she already had. She was so focused on success and reaching her goal that she never came to appreciate what she'd lost or gained along the way. Like a wise man once said, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Now that she's lost the position that she's pursued for most of her life, Lilith doesn't have a destination or goal anymore. She now realizes that she actually is on a journey. She learns that she has a chance to get the life that she truly wants. And we see that with what she's going through so far in the show's second season. She continues to appreciate and care about the friendship she has with Hootie. Their friendship has grown so strong that Hootie physically breaks down at the very thought of them being apart. She also shows that she doesn't look down at Luce anymore. anymore, even is impressed and fascinated of what she can do despite her limitations of being human. Even when we see that in her past she's always wanted love and attention from her mother, we see both her and her mother acknowledge their conflict, and doesn't miss the chance to be happy with her mother and make up for all the time that they've missed together. This growth that we see from Lilith through season 2 solely comes from her finally looking back on herself and everything that she's done from who she was in season 1, and knowing that it wasn't who she really wanted to be, which I'm sure a lot of us, and from how it seems, the fandom can relate to. So, I hope this video has maybe changed your mind about Lilith as a character, or at least gives you a glimpse as to why people like me actually loved her since day 1. I didn't get into the Owl House until it was a year old, so I was pretty late to the scene and the fandom, but when I watched the show for the first time and saw Lilith, I just couldn't help but like her. But after learning just how much hate was thrown at her during the show's first season, it just didn't feel right to me, which was the big inspiration as to why I wanted to make this video. I'm currently making this before her return in the second half of season 2, so I'm excited to see her come back, and I'm glad that people are enjoying her as the show goes on. But to all those fans that have loved her since the beginning that are watching this, you are not alone. The reason this video even exists is because we're out there. Some people can disagree with us, and that's fine, but I just want to show why people like us have loved Lilith since the moment she came on screen. She may not be perfect, nobody is, that's what makes us human, but to some of us, that doesn't mean that she can't be special. And that's why I think Lilith Clawthorne is a misunderstood character.